I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening for the Candidates Forum. Appreciate you coming out. Typically, we take care of a little bit of business before we get started with the forum. This should not take very long. What we do is we elect our board of directors, and then we elect our executive committee. We'll have a few brief comments made by our new co-president, and then we'll get started with the candidates. So our nominated board for 2013 and 14 is Sandy Crittenden, Bob McLean, John Davey, Bill Grove, Phil Lively, Charlie Ramarino, John Ruggiero, Walter Sleeth, Sharon Vucinic. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the new board is elected. The executive committee is co-presidents Bob McLean and John Davey, vice president Wally Sleeth, secretary treasurer Phil Lively. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ooh, duly elected. We slipped that one in over Phil. Anyway, I'd like to introduce Bob McLean, co-president, and then we'll get started with tonight's candidates forum. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bob McLean, living on Prior Lane, and I'm pleased to learn and to see that we have representation from the Lindenwood Group and others throughout the Atherton community. My parents would have been proud. They lived in Lindenwood, moved there in the 60s, so I feel that I'm meeting new people, but it feels like home. But at any rate, the ACIL has its purpose and what we're all about. We've been in business for 60 years as a voluntary organization, no political bias, and there are cards if you care to join us. We'd love to have you become a member if you're already not a member, and we'd love to have you talk to your neighbors. Our numbers have been dwindling a bit, and we think there are lots of good reasons to become a member in ACIL to help us support functions like this. We don't take a stand in these functions, but over the last couple of years, we've sponsored a number of discussions and debates on such things as high-speed rail. We work hard at the emergency preparedness program that's been ongoing in Atherton for quite a while in conjunction with the fire departments and the schools. We've had a discussion around the car wheel issue, what goes on in the Baylands that could affect our traffic here in Atherton, if it can be affected, given what's happening right now. I hope all of you made it safely here. And so we would like to sponsor more events. We've talked about having more events in the park here at Holbrook Palmer Park to help neighbors meet neighbors, especially from different parts of Atherton. And we'd like to continue to carry on as sponsors of debate, if you will, or discussion about issues that impact our community. So we'd really like to welcome you aboard, and if anyone is interested in becoming a board member, we always have room. The pay is exactly the same from top to bottom. So at any rate, again, thank you for coming out, and I really want to extend my thanks to the candidates and to the League of Women's Voters who will manage the program as they have in the past, and thank you for your help and your partnership. And so at this time, I'd like to introduce from the League of Women Voters, Lisa Conrad, who will keep us all on track.
Thank you and good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of South San Mateo County, I welcome the candidates, and especially you, the audience, to this free public forum for the Atherton Town Council. This forum is being co-sponsored by the Atherton Civic Interest League, of course, and our league. I am Lisa Conrad, and we've already been through this. I'm the moderator this evening, and I'd like to take a minute to tell you a little bit about the League. League of Women Voters is a national, nonpartisan volunteer organization of men and women. Our mission is to encourage your active and informed participation in your government at every level, local, regional, state, and national. The League does not support or endorse candidates or political parties, although it does work to influence public policy through advocacy and education. Our education mission is to help voters gain fair and unbiased information in order to make an informed decision on Election Day, November 5th. In addition to this forum, I encourage you to use the California State League of Women Voters website, smartvoter.org, for information about all of the candidates and measures on your ballot. That's smartvoter.org And you just type in your address, it brings up your ballot, and you click on anything on your ballot, and it takes you to all kinds of information out there on the internet. It's wonderful. So to begin, ask everyone to please turn off your electronic devices. This event is being recorded and will be replayed on local public access TV. You can access the recording by going to either the Mid-Peninsula Community Media Center, which is midpenmedia.org, the League's website, or smartvoter.org. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement and also 2 minutes for a closing statement. Written questions will be accepted from the audience. This allows us to cover as wide a range of issues as possible and to be sure the questions are not speeches and not redundant. There are League volunteers in the room. They're distributing 3x5 cards, so raise your hand, and if you want a card, when your question is complete, hold the card up and it'll be collected and brought up here. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. A League of Women Voters volunteer, Joanne Brueggemann, sitting in front, she'll monitor the time. She'll hold up a sign when there's 1 minute left, and a sign when there's 30 seconds left, and a stop sign when the allotted time is up. Candidates will answer the questions in a rotating order, and according to the lots they drew, candidates starting out, Greg Conlon, Rick DeGolia, and Diane Sandhu. Let's see, I think we can get started with Mr. Conlon on the left.
I was number 3.
He was third.
Oh, you're through.
I was the lucky one.
Oh, I thought you were the unlucky one.
No, I was the lucky one.
I am so sorry, reverse my order exactly.
No problem. So I don't know if I need a mic or not. You can let me know if I do.
Yeah, please use your
And is it on?
Yep.
It should be on.
Okay, great. So I'm Diane Sandhu, and thank you very much for attending tonight. Certainly all of you have taken your time, and I deeply appreciate that you're doing that. I've lived in Atherton for 18 years. I'm the mother of 2 wonderful college students, and I've been a business owner for 25 years successfully, thank goodness, both software and in staff augmentation. I'm currently on the Finance Committee as a vice chair, and it's given me some tremendous insight on where is our money coming from, how are we spending our money, what are our liabilities, and I'm strongly for either the suspension or reduction of the parcel tax, financial stability overall. I'd love to see us fully fund over time the pension fund liability in a protected trust. Safety is of key importance to, I think, all of the residents, with some eco-friendly lighting. And I think lastly, certainly the rail, most people are against that, and certainly so am I. So please vote, and as we say, vote often. And hopefully you see my signs up, and hopefully they stay up. So I look forward to speaking to all of you in a few more minutes.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mr. DeGolia.
There you go.
My name is Rick DeGolia. I want to thank the leagues for organizing this event and all of you for coming. I first came to Atherton in 1953. I was 3 years old. My grandparents lived in Lindenwood from 1940 to the 80s. I then moved away, went to school. I went to law school at Harvard. I worked in Silicon Valley as a lawyer and then as a business executive in the high-tech industry. And I came back to Atherton in 2000 to raise my kids. I'm running for city council because I want to represent all generations in Atherton. We need to balance the needs of young families that are moving into Atherton with the concerns and interests of our older citizens. I believe that a representative, first and foremost, needs to focus on communication and accessibility. And I will work hard to reach out to all of you and to seek your input on any decisions that we face. Anyone who has worked on the Civic Center Advisory Committee, where I've been vice chair, or on the Surf Air issue, where I've provided leadership, will tell you that I am thoughtful, respectful, and strategic. I try to focus on strategy in everything that I do, and I respect others, and I respect when others have opinions that are different from mine. I strongly support the parcel tax. I'm opposed to high-speed rail. I support the voter decision to refurbish the Little League field in the park. I believe that we need bike lanes, we need safer crossings on El Camino, we need traffic plans for our high schools. I believe in conservative fiscal management, and I think we need rules to manage how many houses are being built on each of our streets. Atherton needs an overall strategic plan. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us, and I believe that this is a very important year. I hope that you vote in this election, and I hope you consider voting for me.
Good evening. I thank all of you for showing up tonight. It was a little thin early on, but you showed up, so we appreciate it. I'm Craig Conlon. I'm running for Atherton Town Council, and I ran a year ago, if you recall, and there were 4 of us running for 2 spots, and unfortunately I came in 3rd place by 200 votes, which was very, very close. But I want to try and explain why I think I am the best candidate to serve Atherton. I've been involved in Atherton for over 10 years on the committees. The rail committee, I've been very close to that committee because of the threat of the high-speed rail. And we went through a lot of agony with Jerry Carlson at the chair. And we all worked behind Jerry to see if we couldn't mitigate some of the perceived dangers that we were going to have. And I think we have done that. We got rid of the berm. And I think that was the first accomplishment, and they're still fighting it out tooth and nail. But I've also been on the Finance Committee. I'm chair of the Finance Committee, and Diane is the vice chair, so we both have good experience. I'm a CPA. I have been all my life, and I'm still involved in my accounting practice and a consulting practice. So I'm looking forward to try and keep Atherton safe. I mean, not only on the high-speed rail, but on the community. We've had some sad situations with some burglaries lately, and we've had a couple fatalities in the last 6 months on the railroad. So there's an issue there. I have basically 5 goals in my platform. The first is the protecting the police department from being outsourced, and I think their facilities are deplorable, and I think we need to do something, and hopefully in the town center activity they will correct that situation. And we want to pass the parcel tax and balance the budget at the same time. So I ask for your vote. One thing I add is the civility at the board meetings. I think I will do everything I can to make that happen. It's been pretty pathetic at times, but hopefully it's going to get better. So I appreciate your vote. Look forward to your questions.
Could you check to see if the mic is on? You got it turned off. You can't hear.
It's stuck on now. So you let him repeat. All right. Let's just start with Ms. Sandhu. If you were elected to the council, would you support evaluating what the savings and service levels could be if the town were to outsource the police? And if yes, what would be the savings level that would make you interested in pursuing this?
This is a question that's asked of us on every single interview. So can you hear me with just the regular mics?
Oh,
No.
I'm sorry. Last night I had my own mic, so.
Then I'll stand again. We're always asked this question. And I think, quite frankly, we've seen success in San Carlos. We've seen success in Mill Brae. The only reason to outsource, and we did it with the planning and we did it with Public Works, is a financial push. There's always going to be a savings. It's a long-term savings. It's your long-term liabilities that are going to be reduced. At this time, I have not heard from the residents to say this is absolutely what we want to do. Even though the police are about 70% of our budget, it's an increasing number. I think
We just saw it increase by about $100,000 from 5.4 to 5.5. Until financially we cannot afford it, I don't think it would be something that we would do. Or unless someone with the audience and somebody made it incredibly clear that we have to do it, it wouldn't be something that I would push for. Pass the same.
Yes, yes.
Well, you want to go behind you, or else you're going to be trapped. Well, I think that if there is a push from residents to evaluate the cost savings of outsourcing the police, that's something that the council could have done. I have talked to a lot of residents about this issue. I've walked in every precinct in the town, and I find there to be an enormous number of people that don't want to outsource the police. I just don't believe that it's something that we're going to support, and I'm opposed to it because of that, and because I think that we're going to end up sacrificing service for cost. And even if we're saving significant costs, the way I look at the town's finances today, our financial situation is only getting better. We're seeing plenty of houses being torn down, new houses being built, and the tax base on those new houses is in the $100,000 plus range, whereas the tax base in any house before 1978, and plenty of them are before 1978, is in the $2,000 to $3,000 range. The town gets 8% of that. The police doesn't constitute 70% of our budget, it constitutes 54% of our budget. And I think if you read the new contract that's just been negotiated by the city manager and supported by the council, the direction of cost is going in the right direction. So I think that there are issues in terms of service that we want to look at. We lost a school service operator from the police department, but I think it's worth looking at, but I don't support outsourcing.
Is it on this time? All right. No, my position, one of my two top positions is to protect the police from outsourcing and at the same time balancing the budget. And I think that's the challenge, and I right now believe we can do that at least for the next 3 or 4 years, especially if they settle the police contract tomorrow night. And I just think that the police in Atherton have a special service, if you will. When you go in and look at the police department and look at the number of keys that they control or they maintain of people on vacation, it looked like 1,000. So I mean, I think everybody treats the police as their private guards. And I think the fact that they don't charge every time somebody has a false alarm, and I know my kids once in a while come in and set mine off, so I know how that happens. It's a special level of service that people in Atherton, I think, are willing to pay for. And until we get to a financial crunch that's close to bankruptcy, I would not support outsourcing the police. Thank you. Outsourcing the police. Thank you.
What would you propose if Prop X does not pass? And we'll begin with Mr. DeGolia.
Well, if Prop X does not pass in November, I think that the council should resubmit it for a vote in June. And that every single person in this room should come out and work for it. I think that the last time that S&T were up, they passed by 80% of the vote. I will be surprised if it doesn't pass this time, but if it doesn't pass, it will be because there wasn't enough effort put into it. I think our community supports it, and when you look at our tax base, $750 a year is minimal compared to what the property taxes are that most of us pay. Right now, it's important that we have this property tax passed, this parcel tax passed, because we don't want to dip into our reserves. We've built up a good reserve. The council made a great decision to pay down long-term liabilities by $2 million recently. There's a remaining $4.4 million of long-term liabilities left. If we continue to have surpluses, which I expect we will, those should be paid down. But we need Prop X to pass because Those are the kinds of things that we've got to get done. We've got to pay down those long-term liabilities, and we've got to maintain our reserves.
I think for the first couple of years, we could get by in the general fund, but the problem's going to be in the capital projects. We've got almost a $3 million project on Marsh Road that needs to be completed, and over $2 million of that was coming out of the parcel tax. So if the parcel tax doesn't pass, I think we have the risk that the sidewall on Marsh Road will collapse and we'll have a mess. So there's $3 million at risk, and we're getting almost $750,000 a year from the parcel tax for capital projects. So it's exactly that amount would fund that project. So if it doesn't happen, I'm not sure that we have the other projects that are being funded that would still need to, the ceiling on the streets and the potholes and what else is also funded at capital projects. But the Marsh Road project was particularly designated by the parcel tax. So I think it would be a shame because the capital projects would really be hurt. And Atherton is the wealthiest community in the United States, zip code. It would be a shame and a disgrace for us not to have the money to maintain our facilities. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, well, being on the Finance Committee, I can tell you that we took the numbers from the Finance Department. We did an independent analysis. And on that independent analysis, I can tell you, the money that you're paying in property tax is based on numbers from 2011. Prop 13 works 18 months in arrears. You have a 9% increasing revenue source that we are tracking. It doesn't even include the stuff that's coming out of the ground. So to tell us that on top of our property tax, you have to pay $750, I'm sorry, I disagree with you. It doesn't matter about wealth. And there's a lot of people in this community who are on fixed incomes. They've watched their current incomes go down. They lost money in the stock market. I disagree with padding the number. We have $1.2 million is sitting around from the parcel tax that's not being utilized. We have Measure A, Measure M, and the gas tax. That alone is $750K. So I disagree with Measure X. And I'd like for you to realize that I think we're capable of managing our money better. And my goal is to manage every penny, whether it's a $4.9 million surplus or $750. And that's how I feel. And that's really what I want to do for my residents. And again, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it's a matter how it's spent. And I'm very, very strong about having everything watched. And that's the goal for your sake.
Should Atherton stay in the county library system or go otherwise? That's Mr. Conlon.
Well, I think the countywide system is, it has to be looked at because it's funded, and as a result of the funding, we're getting considerable money, and that money is going to be used for the library. So I haven't seen the numbers on what the savings would be, if any, for the operation. So that's a very detailed question that I would support keeping what we have, but I'd certainly look at the detail and find out if there's another way of doing it. But until we get the library built, I would not touch it. Thank you.
Exercise getting up and down. I think at this time probably leaving it alone would make sense, even though I have to admit the other day I was at the library committee. It was not being staffed correctly. It's a shame to see it not being staffed. There was one person who showed up to open the doors. If that person hadn't shown up, it wouldn't have been open. I think the library needs to offer more of an educational tool to kids. It needs to outreach to our communities. They need to have better internships, maybe, a better training program. And the county is slightly failing with this. They're not really watching the store of what we're doing. So it does need to be evaluated, but overall, the town council itself has kind of stayed out of how that's managed. We can influence, but certainly we've been kind of standing back from that. But I can tell you the Library Steering Committee is not happy with the way it's being run at this time.
Okay, well, I know a fair amount about the library because I'm on the Civic Center Advisory Committee and has an ad hoc library committee of which I'm the chair, and we've done a lot of work thinking about what we want to do with the new library in the Civic Center when we build the new Civic Center. And with respect to the JPA, which we're part of San Mateo County's library system, and for cities that pay in from their property tax more than is used by their library, that excess goes into a fund which is called the Donor City Fund. In San Mateo County, there are 3 donor cities: Portola Valley, Woodside, and Atherton. In Atherton, as of June 2014, it is projected that we will have $7.8 million in that fund. And by the time we start building the library, we will probably have close to $9 million in that fund. If we leave the library system, we lose the money. So we clearly don't want to leave the library system, just as Greg said. That's something we want to evaluate once we have built the library. Now, if the lawyers tell us differently, we can look at it differently. But that's what the city manager told me. We are generating $750,000 to $800,000 a year in excess of our costs that build that fund. So I think that if there are insufficient people, we need, in the library, we need to look at the costs, and we need to manage those costs so that our tax dollars get used properly.
What specific things would you do to increase citizen involvement in Atherton?
Well, I think certainly the emails that we're all receiving are very, very helpful. Maybe publication, getting on cable for those people who don't have a computer, and maybe that's on how they access their information. That would cost the town about $60,000 to connect, but I think it might be worth it. I think there should be a greater outreach to our younger community members or young people. Like I said, I'd love to see internships, maybe ride-alongs with the police, involvement in the library. I think it's a field that many people don't even think that it's open to them. And we have a highly educated group of individuals living in this community, and I think we need to leverage off of that. And I don't think they realize that there's a need. So, even myself, I have to admit, it took me 51 years to turn around and say, wow, you know what, I actually need to spend time in my community. And it took me time to get my children off to school. That was a big challenge. But I think that that's important. And all it was an advertisement on the website, what an opening is and what the requirements were. So I think we can do both. We need to reach out to our community through technology, but then also reach out to them purely on cable TV, I think might be the right way to go.
Okay, citizen involvement increase. This is a big subject. It's something I feel really passionate about. I mean, I've decided that in my life, I'm prepared to give back to the community. My kids have gone to college, and that's why I'm running for council. I think there's lots of people whose kids have left and who are looking for things to do in their lives. Some of them work on nonprofits, some of them do other things, and participation with the community is one thing. We need to find creative ways to engage people. Certainly, reaching out and communication from the council and encouragement of people to join the committees is one thing to do. I think that it is a really big area. One of my goals is to bring many of my contacts and friends from the high-tech industry who I've worked with for the last 28 years, and some of whom live in Atherton, into our community and involvement, not necessarily on the council, but in the committees that are part of the council, into the ACIL. I think that this is really important for all of us to do, and I think that there are creative ways we can find to increase participation.
You know, when I was in business for so many years, the CEO of my company had every partner, it was a partnership, give back from the first day they walked in the door. And as a result, I spent 20 years on virtually 2 nonprofit boards my entire career. And then when I retired, I continued to do that. And I think that that type of attitude gets people involved before they retire rather than after they retire. And I think if we could get Facebook to get into that mode of giving back, because they're certainly our new neighbor, and we're going to have a lot of impact from them as they get bigger and bigger. So I think one thing to do is to work with Facebook to see if we can't get their people involved in our community, the ones that live here or even the ones that are working here close by would be a good way to do it. Now, I think the television will be a great help in getting people more involved. And of course, when there's an issue, it's easy for them to get involved. I know in Menlo, when they were going to put a senior citizens home or housing up in Sharon Heights, I mean, that whole community erupted. So if you really want to get them involved, you decide to do something that they distaste, and they'll get involved overnight. So that is not what I'm recommending, but that'll do it every time. But get them involved by giving back at an early stage. Thank you.
We got a few on safety. Traffic and accidents are on the rise in Atherton. What priorities do you have to improve public safety? Mr. DeGolia.
I think that this is one of the most important topics that we need to face when we look at city council elections. Unfortunately, Caltrans is not, El Camino is not something that we control. It's Caltrans territory. We can work with Caltrans to try to improve particularly the road crossings there. But 2 ideas that I have that I think we should bring to Caltrans are, one, I asked myself, why is it that it's between Selby Lane and Watkins where there's 3 lanes on both sides of El Camino? There's not 3 lanes in Redwood City, there's not 3 lanes in Menlo Park. Why is it that people need to speed through Atherton by getting that 3rd lane? We should go to Caltrans and reduce that to 2 lanes, maybe create a little barrier and have bike lanes down there. But that's one idea. We absolutely need a safer crossing between Isabella and Watkins. Kids on the west side can't ride their bikes to our park. So I've talked to the head of Public Works about that, and they're in discussions with Caltrans about doing something there. We obviously need to do something at Selby Lane. One idea is to stop the left-hand turn from Selby Lane. The residents on Selby Lane support that. So I think that we need to engage the residents to talk about what to do in each area where we need to improve road safety, and I think it's something that we really need to focus on.
This is my number 1 issue on the rail, but I think on the roads too, it's still an issue. The Menlo College, all the students do not cross the intersection at the stoplight. They go down 1 block and they come across on Alexandra. Alejandra. And I think it's, I said, I had one out there this weekend helping me ring doorbells, but he was saying that, we have a problem getting across the street, especially at night. So I think the college students, virtually all of them, use that intersection when they should go up to the light, but you're never going to get them to do that. But my issue is the rail. I was president of the California PUC, and we were responsible for rail safety for the entire state. And when I was president, they killed 20 people on Caltrains. And I just thought that was unbelievably poor something. And I got them $1 million through various ways from the state to put up fencing, and they at least did that on the high school. When the high school was on the tracks, they put up Gaza Strip type fencing. So, but I think that Watkins is my concern. People that take their kids to school every morning have a choice when that gates go up as to whether they should go out there immediately or not. And I just think we should have gates with 2 arms on both sides, so somebody that can't see the opposite direction will not cut across just to save 3 seconds. But I mean, Watkins we had a death last night at Menlo, and we've had 2 here in Atherton in the last year. So we just got to face up that we've got a problem and spend some money to fix it. Thank you.
I want to trip him up there. I think, obviously, it's on anything that you've seen from me on a website or on a posting. Lighting, I think, is the key. Eco-friendly lighting that's not intrusive, that's aesthetically correct. We have a lot of lighting that's very, very old. It's not working in some cases. It may be out for a week. I think throughout the whole community, we should have better lighting. It will be able, people will be able to use the roads, they'll walk at night, our kids will be able to come home in safety, and that's very, very important for the community overall. I actually spoke to the community services manager today. We all witnessed a robocall from the police over the weekend that there was an active break-in, actually on 2 houses, where somebody was physically home and someone tried to break in. In South Bay and in North Bay, you will see video cameras on key corners. It has not been something the community wanted at that time. They were afraid for the invasion of their privacy. They were afraid how it was going to be utilized. It might be something we're almost headed that direction, or at least on key corners. If there's a break-in or an attempted break-in, they can come on and see what cars are coming by. I mean, that's going to be the next, probably the next way to keep our residents a little safer, is to use technology. Thank you.
Should Atherton be on the public access TV station in 20 and 29, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Palo Alto, and others, broadcast their council and committee meetings? Would you advocate broadcasting Atherton's meetings? Mr. Conlon.
Yes, I went to the council meeting and talked on this point. I just think it's $60,000 was their estimate. It may be a different amount, plus or minus, but I just think that if you're going to get involvement with the community, I mean, the council meeting where this was discussed, there was 3 people in the audience, 3. And I mean, this would be the crowd tonight. I'm really pleased and proud that you showed up, because the council meetings, I mean, if you get down to 3 people, you gotta have some way that people can find out what's going on, or the council could do anything they want without any public participation or awareness. So I would strongly support that, and I think the money would be well spent.
Actually, I think I said this earlier. Certainly, I think we should be on cable. I'm sure there's a way to stream this somehow. We can bypass some of the expenses of the costs, and I'm sure there could be some negotiating that we could maybe do, but it's imperative. We have to communicate with residents in a way that they want. And if you're at home, you're going to watch cable TV, and you should, because we want to be watched, and we should be watched, right? And if you don't watch us, you're not going to know what's going on. And as an older community, people just don't have the time, or can't make the effort, or it's just too hard for them to show up for evening meetings, or divide a meeting, especially in a midweek forum. So I am absolutely for coming up with the money, or a way, or using streaming or something to negotiate to get us on cable.
I think we all agree that this is the right thing to do. The council looked at this at the last meeting, and it's clear that they're going to support it. I am totally in support of it. As we are building this new Civic Center, we need to think about how we design this project so that it works through the different changes that occur in the future, and certainly technology changes are huge. So whether it's cable TV, which sounds like the right thing now, or streaming in the future, or whatever other technology may come along, we need to be able to address that. And while thinking about that, we spoke earlier about the big surplus that we have in the library and the annual surplus that we have with respect to the library, we need to see the library not as a book warehouse, but as an information management center. And the way that information management center needs to work is it needs to give everyone in the community access to the information that is managed out of that central hub. And that should include Wi-Fi for every house in the town. The library can afford it, and we should get it, and that can connect to making these public meetings more accessible to people in whatever format they choose to pay attention to them. We need to bring the information to them.
Should all of the budget surplus be used to fund pension liabilities, mostly police, in lieu of funding safe routes to school?
No. To be real clear about that. I think we've all witnessed up and down of many different things. We've all seen disasters actually happen. So I am definitely for funding using part of the surplus for funding the pension fund liability. We know it exists. We know it's a number. We know CalPERS has us invested at 7.5%. We know that's the wrong number. We know no one's getting 7.5%. We know it's 5 or 5.5%. We've looked at Portola Valley, we've looked at Hillsborough, we've looked at other communities. They're setting aside money, so we know we have to do it. It's a responsible thing to do. It's the right thing to do. We have the money, and as I said before, we have an increasing revenue source. Our monies are from 2011. Hopefully we have great numbers coming up in November, and I think we will. And like I said, it's an increasing revenue source, and I think we're going to be fine if we manage it responsibly. So I don't believe in just putting it all in one place. I believe in doing it over time. And I think we're the only town, city in the United States can say that we have an increasing revenue source and we're able to track it. And I think we should protect that.
Okay, so the question was where to use the budget surplus, and it presumed that we're using it to pay down the pension liabilities. In fact, we used a portion of it. We used $2 million of it, but we had, I believe, a $4.9 million surplus. So we used some of it to build the reserves to the point where we want them. We used a good portion of it to reduce the pension liabilities, and the rest is in the unallocated general fund for the town. I absolutely think that we need to use some of this money to build safe bike routes to school. This is one of the key priorities for young families that are moving into town, increasing our tax base, and we have very poor bike lanes from the residential communities to the schools. This is really important for us to address. I don't think we have to sacrifice paying down the unfunded liabilities. There's $4.4 million left in those unfunded liabilities. These tax dollars, once they go up, they stay up. Tax dollars don't go down when they're property taxes. So we're going to be able to pay off these unfunded liabilities in the next few years, and I think we absolutely have to find a way to build bike lanes so that kids can ride their bikes to school. Why do more kids ride their bikes to Laurel School from the Menlo side of Oak Grove than they do from the Atherton side? We need to help with this problem.
As Rick mentioned, that they just paid, the council just paid $2 million of the 4.9 unallocated reserve to fund past service cost on healthcare. So there's only 1.9 or 2.9 left in that reserve for other purposes. But I think there's a plan for pedestrian and bicycle traffic in Atherton. There's a master plan being developed now that's above and beyond the capital projects that are already identified for the next 5 years. So I think that project and my pet project at Watkins, which would cost $1.5 million, would be a boon for kids going to school, and I would support both activities because we've been very fortunate not to have a serious accident with the children, and I just want to keep it that way. So thank you.
What are your views on building a new town center, including police facilities, building department, town offices, library, and council chambers? How do you propose funding such a project? It's Mr. DeGolia.
I've done a lot of thinking about this since I'm on the Civic Center Advisory Committee. So first, funding it is easy. There's 3 sources of funding. What will be included in the community center is a new police station, new administrative and planning and public works office, so sort of the civic function, and a new library. There are 3 sources of funds that will pay for it. There's $2 million from development fees that will go toward the cost of the planning department. That will be a capital cost to build a new building that will probably be part of other administrative buildings, but there's $2 million there. There's, as we've said, there's a substantial amount of money for the library. The library will be fully paid out of the money that comes from our taxes and that sits with the county today. And then the third source will be private donations. We'll need to do a private fundraising program amongst our residents to fund the remaining costs of the police station and the administrative offices. Portola Valley did it. They did very well. I think that this new civic center can be a tremendous coming together for Atherton. We can create a center in the town that we're proud of, that is substantially different from what we have now. And I think that part of the proposal is to increase the parkland amongst that 4.5 acre parcel that's next to the train station. We have a good piece of land. We need creative design about how to make it feel like a real center, but I think that we can make it as a coming together, and it can be very attractive for the town.
You know, I took a tour of the town's facilities a month ago, and I tell you, if any of you looked at our police department and our building and public works department, you would be embarrassed that a town of our wealth puts up with the conditions that we have. It's just, and if we aren't able to raise the money from private funds, I personally will help raise the money, because I've had a lot of experience in raising money in my political career. So there are techniques and ways of identifying people and doing steps to raise money. And I think this cause is so worthy that it would be a lot easier to raise money for this project than it is for a political campaign. So I think we can raise that money, but if we don't, then we'll just have to look for other means. But we've got to do it. It's an embarrassment if we don't. And I don't know if it's permissible, but if any of you have any question, I would take that tour I took. It only takes you a half hour, and it really is embarrassing.
Certainly, we need a new town hall. We need better facilities for our police. All the candidates agree on this. Certainly, when women police officers have to change their clothes in the bathroom, I'm sure there's both OSHA requirements that we're in breach of. I know none of them are earthquake prepared. I personally lost my house in the '89 earthquake, so I do know what it feels like to have a house come tumbling down around you. It's not something that you want people, the public, to be in. However, I think as I walk my neighborhood and I ask questions what they think, it's very clear they've said, don't build a Taj Mahal. Build something that suits our needs within a reasonable budget, that's aesthetically correct for a still town feel. I'm preaching to have eco-friendly materials, green materials. It's exactly what Portola Valley did, They were able to access federal funds because they did that. And I think we can do the same. It would be a credit back to our town. So I think IT is also a very key facet throughout any and all buildings. Most certainly we should be top-notch on that. That's our community. That's what we know best. That's what we should absolutely positively have. But again, I don't believe in building a Taj Mahal. I believe in building something that's going to suit our needs within a budget that makes sense. Thank you.
There were a couple of questions on some activities proposed in our neighbor Menlo Park near Atherton borders. A homeless shelter, housing zones proposed by Menlo Park, and a possible abortion clinic in the old Chili's. Wondering how you feel about this on Atherton's border and what you might do to address this. What are your thoughts on that? Mr. Conlon.
This is an issue for the Bay Area. I mean, Atherton has been informed, and Bill, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we're going to have to build 92 units of housing and provide 200 new jobs under the Bay Area Plan. And this Bay Area Plan has gone into motion by the state legislature and is run by a bunch of non-elected officials. And that's what happened to Menlo. They kept fighting it, and finally they threatened a lawsuit, so they went along with it. And I still don't think they have the legal basis for enforcing that on communities that, you know, if there's plenty of places to build facilities, and you just don't go in the middle of a residential neighborhood that's completely inconsistent with the community of interest, if you will, of that particular location. So, and I've just spent the last 2 months trying to figure out how to redistrict San Mateo County. And one of the criteria is a community of interest, that you keep people in the same communities, the same place they shop, they go to church. And if you bring in a whole new set of people and set them right in the middle of a community of interest that they're not part of or haven't been part of, I think it's wrong. And I think if I'm on the council and the Bay Area Plan insists on doing what they're doing, we have the alternative of withdrawing from ABAG. ABAG is the city the association of all the cities in the Bay Area, and they would threaten just cutting off some of our funds. And I think the amount of funds we get from them is not that significant that I would withdraw from ABAG and forfeit the funds.
I don't think it's something the community is going to want, let's put it that way. I think there's usually a way to somehow bypass these things. Certainly, Section 8 housing or anything that's going to be in a mixed community. I have seen in other countries, in England, it's very common to have Chelsea right next to a Section 8 house. In this community, it doesn't really fit. I don't think that it's going to be something that our residents are going to want. It would be something that I would make every effort to be sure that we oppose.
I don't know anything about an abortion clinic or a homeless shelter going into Menlo on our border, so I don't have any information on it. I don't have a particular opinion about, I guess there's all kinds of safety issues and issues of public safety, issues of traffic. These things come up in any business community. Menlo Park has those issues because they have businesses. We don't have businesses. I would need to understand it better to have a strong opinion about it. I mean, we would not have those coming into our community, but we don't have businesses in our community. I do think that the concept of looking at these issues that have regional impacts is really important. And one of the responsibilities of the council is to support and represent Atherton in all of the various regional facets and committees that Atherton needs to be represented, and Atherton's had a tremendous voice in the past. So I strongly support that, and I'd need to know more about the specific shelter and the specific clinic to have an opinion about those specific things.
So apparently people would like a little bit more information on specifics. What should the council do to address the increasing danger caused by more Middlefield traffic and the increased young population at Encinal? Buses, road widening, parking around Middlefield. Sandhu.
Obviously, there is a growth in attendees for the schools that are in our communities. In the past, there used to be what was called a community officer, where the police actually had a community officer who would monitor many of the areas. It's like a non-police officer, but it was certainly a community advocate. I'd like to see that reinstated. I think that that would engage the younger group, younger people that are walking around in a more civil manner. Maybe they would engage in conversation, maybe they would see somebody around a little bit more. As far as the traffic goes, again, I would go back to better lighting. I think there's a lot of avenues that can be done. Some of them might be intrusive. Cameras is certainly something that I've proposed in the past, but it's not something that currently our residents have said yes to. But as far as an overall community, I think it's very possible to make it safer for everybody. But again, I would have more of a police community recipient advocate, I think is kind of a better way to go.
Well, traffic around the schools is a huge problem in Atherton. It's a problem in every single school. I strongly agree that we should bring back the safety resource officer for the police department. When the schools are in session, the police are focused on issues that gravitate around the schools. They may be traffic, there's just more population there. It's really an important position to fill, and I think it's a lack in the police department not to have it. But it doesn't really address the traffic issue head on. What I do know is that Menlo School put in place a traffic management program to limit the amount of traffic going down Valparaiso and around Menlo School, and it's been very successful. It's being proposed that that same type of traffic management program apply to Sacred Heart, where there's a huge traffic problem where a meal comes in to Valparaiso, and you can get huge backups there. I know this is a problem around Encinal School, and kids at Encinal School aren't driving to school, it's parents that are driving to school. So exactly how we manage that, I'm not sure, but some form of a traffic management program needs to be implemented. Maybe we can find a way to encourage carpools and other ways to limit the traffic. But I think that we should use the example of where it's been successful to try to apply it to the other areas where we need to improve on the traffic management.
Since I drive Middlefield every day, I'm very familiar with this situation. And I just start from Redwood City and coming down, the first intersection is Fair Oaks, and I just think that and two of the people that live on the corner, in fact, three of the people I know very well, or at least fairly well, and they wouldn't be happy with what I'm going to say, but I think there should be a stoplight there for the peak hours. Otherwise, in the morning from 7 to 9, and in the evening from 4 to 6, because it's suicide. If you're coming up Fair Oaks and turning left onto Middlefield, it's suicide. And just like the one that you mentioned, Rick Selby, where you're turning left on the same situation. And I don't know what kind of accidents we've had there, but I know we've had some. And then you go down to Encinal. I just think we need a police officer. I mean, not at Encinal, but at March. I think we need a police officer out there in the morning because you've got gridlock. And I just know that if a police officer was there to make sure that traffic was flowing, that it would at least minimize the disruption than it does today. And if you get down to Encinal School, I mean, that is, it's another situation that's very difficult to solve. They've got a stoplight, so at least they've made that improvement. But I do think that a patrol officer between Encinal and Marsh Road could certainly improve things. And when there's an accident, they could get response time quickly. So that would be my response to Middlefield. That's what the question was Middlefield?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just for So, if elected, what specific goals would you like to achieve, and how would you plan to accomplish this goal? Mr. DeGolia.
I guess that the first goal that I would say that I would target is communication accessibility to the residents. I think to be a really effective representative, you need to reach out to people and you need to be accessible to them. I do that first with email because that's how I communicate more than any other way. And I'd want to reach out to people and let them know that I want to hear their concerns. I want to hear what issues they face. And I've heard lots of issues during this campaign, like the surf air issue on Middlefield Road is a huge issue. The Cartans issue around Brittany Meadows and Isabella is a huge issue that we all are going to be facing in the next 6 months because there's a big development project there. In addition to communication and accessibility, which I just think is heart of being a representative, I'd like to find a way to address how many houses are being developed on our streets. There's some streets where there's 3 or 4 houses being developed, and that's a burden to the people that live on the street. It's very hard to walk on some of those streets because there's so many cars when the subs are out. I think that that's something we need to work with the developers to figure out an intelligent and creative strategy to solve. I'd also like to bring back a reasonable road impact fee.
Thank you. You know, I had 5 goals listed in my opening comments, and I'll just run down one at a time. The first one was the police department about not being outsourced and improve the facilities. I talked to you about the facilities being so bad that you'd be embarrassed, that I would do everything I could to get those. If the town center somehow doesn't get funded, then I would do everything I could to at least get the police department taken care of, because it's just unbearable. And the parcel tax, if it was to pass the parcel tax without balancing the budget without increasing the parcel tax, then I would, if the parcel tax does not pass, I would do everything I could to bring it back and try it again, because I just think that the capital projects that would not be built in the next 5 years are too important to let that parcel tax go away. My next issue was the protect the town against the electrification of Caltrains and the high-speed rail. You know, I've been involved in this issue for 10 years, and when I say involved, I spend 1 or 2 days a month. I go up to Caltrains until they're so tired of watching me and hearing me that, and the people that know me, I'm so persistent on both the facilities, the fatalities, that they're not doing enough, I don't think, to do, and they're not listening to the towns. Palo Alto, Menlo, and Atherton should have a trench for the train, and it should be a covered trench in the residential areas, and I've been advocating that for 3 to 4 years, and I just think if there's a will, there's going to be a way. So that would be my, and the last goal is the civil conducting the council meetings, and I think we just all have to try it better to do it.
It's going to trip me eventually here. I think there's 3 things that I'm going to put on the top of the list. One of them, for sure, is we're going to inherit whatever the police final agreement's going to be. And digging into that and understanding it better is of key importance. It's going to affect our budget. We need to make sure that we have the monies to deal with it. The second one is going to be getting the Little League back to the table. They're gone. They're not communicating with us. They probably won't communicate with us until after the election. And I think that's important for the residents. They want a resolution. They want to have that finished one way or the other, and I think we need to speak to that and get that finished. The third one has to be not only a master plan, but talk about some of the long-term problems that we deal with as a big expense for this town every year. And it's going to hit us in December and January, and that's going to be rainfall, drainage, and problems with that. I spoke to the community services manager today, Mike Kashigewa, and he very specifically said there's not enough communication between Atherton, Menlo, Portola Valley, and Woodside. The water you're seeing is not Atherton water. The water you're seeing is coming down the hill. And better communication with other community directors is a way to fix that. And I'm a problem solver. I'm a businesswoman. There's always a problem. It always needs resolved. But if you don't open that communication, it's not going to get resolved. Thanks.
Okay, and looking at adjourning on time, this will be our last question. Someone wants to know what the 3 most dangerous intersections are in Atherton, and what the most critical drainage issues are in Atherton, how you address that. Mr. I'm sorry, is that Mr. Conlon?
What was the first one you asked? There was two questions.
Which are the most dangerous
The
intersections?
dangerous intersections? Well,
Three most dangerous, top three.
well, I think that Middlefield has at least two of them, Marsh Road and Fair Oaks and Encinal. I mean, there's really three right there. And then on the El Camino, I don't know which of those streets. They're all equally bad. I mean, from Alexander to, I can't pronounce their names. But the three coming from Menlo College and then Shelby Lane are all very, very dangerous because of the lack of any kind of slowing traffic down, a yellow light. And I know the council has looked at this, and I know they've been frustrated by the Caltrans. And I guess the only thing is to say, I was a commissioner on the California Transportation Commission, and I don't know if I could do better, but I know where to go to get action done. And I just think that we could do more, but you have to be persistent and patient at the same time. And I have both of those.
Guess to myself. I think any of the areas is going to be directly near to or intersecting to a school. You know, I'm a previous Sacred Heart parent, and I can tell you that they alleviated a lot of the traffic by providing a shuttle bus to go from the train line for the kids. It eliminated a lot of bikes, a lot of walking, and it made it just safer. Maybe this is something that needs to be proposed. You know, I think the kids are the priority. And I think that's what we need to focus on. On the drainage, as I just discussed, the water source is coming from a different area. It's not coming from our area. And we have to open that channel of communication. We have current issues we need to deal with, which we're about ready to fix. Our current drainage issues that are, especially on Marsh, but it's also in Stockbridge and a few other areas. Whatever is proposed by whatever company we decide to ultimately utilize, it has to be a long-term plan. I mean, there has to be a fix today because you're going to see it. There has to be a fix to a final resolution. So I'm all about what is the total cost of ownership. I'm going to preach it over and over again because I think when you spend bad money after bad money, you just end up with the same problem over and over. I'd like to see us progress to a final resolution.
Okay, well, with respect to the most dangerous intersections, I think that it's where people, in order to get to a neighborhood street, they have to cross a very busy street. And those three intersections for me are Alejandra on El Camino, Selby Lane on El Camino, and the Isabella Watkins crossing at El Camino. There's no lights at any of those. I think Marsh is dangerous, but there's a light there. So those three intersections on El Camino, I think, are our most dangerous intersections. With respect to the drainage, the council dealt with the issue in a study session of the drainage channel down Marsh Road, and I think they are moving toward a very creative solution, which is to put in a concrete culvert, but possibly cover it with a boardwalk that could be used as a pedestrian path or a bike lane. Wouldn't it be wonderful if that entire drainage channel that went up from where we run into El Camino on Marsh, going up Watkins and all the way up into the hills, up Walsh Road, if that drainage channel couldn't be covered with a boardwalk that would enable people to use it as a bike lane or a pedestrian path. I think we need to bring different solutions together to be creative and to try to figure out how we can address the big infrastructure issues that we need. And we need both bike lanes and improved drainage. That's it.
Thank you. We'll now have closing statements. A reminder that each side has 2 minutes for closing statement, and we will hear from the candidates in reverse order of their opening statements. So, Mr. Conlon.
Well, I believe that you got a good understanding of the positions of each of the three of us. And because of that one question, I covered my 5 goals. So I think the point I want to make is that I think the difference here between us is experience in the public sector. We've all had good experience in the private sector. And I think the people who've worked with me on on the Atherton projects, the rail and the finance, know that that I'm very persistent and very concerned about some of these issues. And I've spent the last 10 years on the rail issues, at least 1 or 2 days a month. And and when I was on the California Transportation Commission, who regulates the entire state, an example of some of the things I was able to do is my 8 colleagues on the commission were going to take the money to put the 2 lanes on San Mateo Bridge and move it to Coronado Bridge. And I said, hey guys, if you take that money away from the Bay Area and put it down in San Diego, I will vote no on every project that you bring for the next 2 years. And we got that money back, and it stayed here, and we built those 2 lanes on the San Mateo Bridge. And I tell my kids every time we drive over that they name those lanes my name, Conlon's lanes. So, but that's the type of experience I have, and I had at the PUC. You know, it's really, I mean, these people are good, capable people, so you can't argue with that. I just think that I've had the experience, an in-depth experience, and the track record of getting things done in the public sector that virtually not many people have done. And so I think that's what I bring to the table. I think I only lost the election last time by 200 votes. I had 1,300 votes in the last election. You only need 2,000 to win. So I'm going to ring virtually every doorbell in this town between the now and the next 3 weeks, and we just laid them all out today, so we're all ready to go. And I appreciate your vote. I know I'll give it everything I got. I've got great experience and great credentials, and I appreciate your vote on November 5th.
Oh, just reverse.
You get to go last. I'm excited about the opportunities that we have in Atherton. I want to leave you with what I consider to be 3 important points. 1, we need leadership that will actively communicate and be accessible and will engage our residents in the course of designing this new civic center and the other important issues that we face in Atherton. Number 2, we need to improve the safety of our streets by developing smart, strategic plans and expanding enforcement while maintaining our close cooperative relationship with the police. Number 3, we need to protect the well-being of our community by minimizing the unnecessary noise that come from different sources and by taking care of overcrowded streets while focusing on the infrastructure improvements that we consider most important. You know, the most enjoyable part of this election for me has been walking from house to house and meeting the hundreds of people that I've met. Our residents have unbelievable knowledge and expertise. We need to find a way to engage these people in our community to address some of these very difficult issues that we face. And I believe that as people's children move away and go to school or graduate from school, that they're going to look at our community and they're going to be willing to contribute to it, just as I am. And I think that over the next several years, I am absolutely dedicated to finding a way to bring those people in to our town to help solve some of these really big problems. I believe the town is at an inflection point. I believe that it's essential for the council to reach out and to engage our residents in an in-depth discussion about what we're going to do with the increasing tax dollars that we're finding. We need to prioritize which of these many infrastructure issues that we've talked about are most important to the residents, and we can only prioritize that by talking to the residents. So that is my task. I hope you'll vote for me.
At least I get to do the closing, right? I want to make it really clear that I'm not a career politician. I'm a resident, and I want to be able to protect your monies in the right way and keep our town in the black and make us financially stable. And I think we had a tremendous turnaround by the town council in the last few years. They've done an amazing job. We were very far in the hole, and we're finally out of that. And I want to keep us on the right path. And that means you got to have a business mind. And if you don't have a business mind, you're not going to be able to figure out where to put the dollars where they are most needed
and to watch the pennies. And again, I don't believe in taxing you just for the point of taxing you because they think they can get it. I think it's when it's needed and when it's imperative, it should be done. But at this point, we have a surplus. I think managing the surplus is a business-oriented mind, and that's my skill, and that's what my ability is. So not being a career politician, I don't think is a liability. I don't come with baggage. I have no political affiliations of any kind. I'm here for just my residents, and I want to make sure you get what you want. We want to be stable. We want to have conservative spending. All goals can be achieved with the right person at the helm, and hopefully you believe that's going to be me. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank all of our speakers tonight. And also, I'd like to thank all of the volunteers, Atherton Civic Interest League, and League of Women Voters that made this forum succeed. And especially thank the attentive audience for your excellent questions. And I want to remind you to look up additional information on the candidates and the local measures, as well as the replay of this recording on the League's election website, smartvoter.org, or also midpennmedia.org, or you can go to the League of Women Voters South San Mateo County website and access all of this. Thank you so very much.
Again, as a co-president of the ACIL, the Atherton Civic Interest League, I'd like to thank Lisa and her team for hosting this evening, and all of our candidates for being so forthright with us. They all spoke about engaging the community, so I'd like to invite all of you to pick up a little card in the back of the room and feel free to join the ACIL so that we can have more discussions like this and be a part of the increased community involvement that we seem to be lacking a little of. So again, there are cards back there. If you could take a few for your neighbors, talk to your neighbors, and we will try to continue to sponsor these kinds of events to keep us on top of what's going on in Atherton. Thanks again for coming out tonight.
Thank you.